Hi guys, thank you so much for wanting to be a part of this project. I'm so excited to get started. It's happening a lot quicker than I thought it was, so it's real pedal to the metal stuff right here. So I've separated these lessons out into 2 videos. So in this first one, I'm going to walk you through the materials that you'll need. Nothing that you can't get from like a basic craft store or office supply store. So it should all be quite easily accessible. And then we're going to layer coordinate in this video. So that is kind of the framework that you're going to use to build your lace up. So we'll layer coordinate, then we're going to learn a couple of ground stitches, just ones that you can have a little play with. They're really basic, should be quite straightforward. So yeah, that's this first video. And then in the next video, what we're going to do is a couple of variations on those stitches that you can sort of have a play with. And then we're going to add a border because no piece of needle lace is complete without a lovely border. And so that should get us through the whole process of making one little leaf. So that is, that's these 2 videos. And look, here's what I've got so far. This is the piece, and eventually I would like it to expand and expand and expand, and my aim is to have it around 3 by 3 meters. So depending on how much we get out of it and the in-person classes and everything, I think we can do it. I think it's going to be mega and have people from, you know, all around the world, as many needles and threads moving as possible. And that's really the goal. You know, it's the byproduct is going to be this enormous thing, but the sort of real aim is to get as many people introduced to the stitches as possible. There are not many people who do this anymore, and I think it's really exciting to learn something new, and it's a beautiful process, and I hope that you enjoy it as much as I do. So let's get stuck in. The first thing we're going to need is a little piece of fabric. So this is approximately 12 by 18-ish centimeters, 5 by 7 inches. Something that is big enough to fold into 4 and still fit your pattern on. You want a folded piece of cotton, anything sturdy-ish, doesn't matter. Sometimes just rip the edge off a bed sheet, whatever works. Doesn't have to be anything, there are no stipulations really for this. Next, paper pattern. So you can download this and print it out. I'll have a link to that on my website. I've printed it on a piece of colored paper. You can see that's going to make it easier. I'm going to use a clear covering. So having it on a colored piece of paper will make it a lot easier to see everything. Once we put sort of white and off-white threads on top, if you're working white on white, it can be a little bit hard to see the threads. So that's why I've printed it on the green here. So just a little easy print out of that and cut out around the form. This is a piece of contact. So this is just contact plastic, the same kind you would use to cover any books, you know, your textbooks when you're at school, that kind of thing. So this is just to protect your paper pattern. Now, this is just the regular stuff. Absolutely use that if you've printed it out on color paper. Another option, if you have ever gone to a lace making supplies kind of store or anything like that, there is a particular kind of lace maker's plastic that is slightly better. You can see it's got this matte finish. It's a little bit stronger. If you have access to a piece of that, then I would definitely recommend using it. But in this video, I'm just going to be using the more accessible stuff. So go for the lace maker's plastic if you've got it. But if not, very easy substitute is just this regular stuff. Now, for sizing, what you want is for it to be just slightly bigger than your paper pattern. So I won't bother measuring it, just go for something that kind of peeks out around the edges there. That's your sizing. Scissors. I have these absolutely divine embroidery scissors that I just love to pieces. But any sort of small embroidery scissors, use nail clippers if you've got them, whatever works. You just want something with a really fine tip that you can cut right up close to your work. Okay, threads. Now you're going to use a couple of threads for this project. First off, this is just a cotton Super easy, basic, nothing too fancy here. You don't want anything that's too strong because later on we want to tear a few of these threads. So this is just like, honestly, from a dollar store, cheapest roller thread you could find, something that's like from a little easy sewing kit kind of thing. That's going to be your couching thread. So that's not going to be part of the finished piece. You want that to be a contrasting color. Remember, it won't show up at all. So just use anything that you've got, ideally a contrasting color, because it'll be easier to see and know which threads to cut later. Your other two threads. Now, what I would love is for you to just use threads that you just happen to have. So what I have here are some crochet cottons. They're just sort of vintage ones. I found them at an op shop or thrift store. Super cheap. You know, your grandparents might have left you a box of cottons. You can use those. Anything like that. I'm going to be mostly using size 20s to 30s. You can go finer if you'd like. You could go thicker if you like. Whatever is comfortable for you, whatever gauge you find really comfortable to work in, please go for it. My only stipulation is that I would love for people to not veer too much into color. Just because it's sometimes, you know, with so many people, if we go really colorful, it can just get quite messy, and I'm aiming for this to be quite big and overwhelming. And if we add lots of color to that, then yeah, I'm just worried about it kind of getting a little too busy. So if we could stick with basic whites, off-whites, light browns, that kind of color, I'm really aiming to have this kind of beautiful sea of neutrals, which I think is going to make the stitches really pop. So yes, I have these cottons. If you want to stick, ideally, I don't love stitching with polyester. If you have polyester, that is okay, but ideally I would love for most of the things to be made out of cotton or linen or silk. I'm going to try and make the leaves two-toned. You can stick to one color if you want, but we're going to use two in these videos just because nice little bit of extra detail. And needles. So I've got two needles, one that's going to fit the bigger threads and one that's going to fit the finer thread. No stipulations for these, whatever fits. I often like ones that don't bulge out too much at the top. That's kind of the only thing I recommend, but you know, it's fine. If it does that, that's okay. So just two needles that fit your threads. Okay, so the first step is to set the piece up. So what we're going to need is your piece of fabric, a little calico, your paper pattern right there, and a little bit of contact plastic. And all you're going to do peel this one off. Fabric's already folded into 4, that's how we want it. Pattern's on top, and we're just going to lower that down. A couple of bubbles won't hurt, it's fine. Oh, but we don't have any anyway, that's good. Smooth it out. That's your first step. So now your paper's not going to rip. That's all that contact is for. We can reuse this a couple of times, so take a little bit of care of it if you want to make multiples. Yeah, and now it's time to start stitching. Now, the first step is just to secure these edges down. This isn't structurally important, it's just really annoying if the corners get in the way. So I'm just going to very quickly, I've got my couching thread here, that's the thread in the contrasting color. I'm going to secure this to the back. Now the back's going to get really messy. There's going to be red threads reaching in all directions. That is a feature, not a bug. So I'm just going to do a back stitch. If you'd like to do a knot, you can do a knot, however you want to attach everything. Now I've just attached that to one of the layers of fabric. It hasn't gone all the way through, but it's fine if it does. Now, super importantly, we're going to come up through. Super importantly, your red threads, your couching threads, are the only threads that will ever go through the fabric. All your lace threads, that's the crochet cotton, the lovely tones, they're all going to sit on top of the pattern, and the red threads are going to go through. So just a little reminder, you should never see one of your lace threads on the back of the piece, only red. So right now what we're going to do, you can see how huge these stitches are. I'm making them about 1 centimeter wide. Doesn't matter if they go through the paper as well. This is purely just to hold the piece together. And I'm just going up and down. Stitches are enormous. This does not have to be neat. All of this is disappearing later. So now that's going all the way around, and it's time for us to actually start adding some bits in this center. So I'm just going to secure that off just because we don't want it to pull. So quick little back stitch, again just over one layer. Now I'm going to bring the needle over. You are going to have so many little holes and stabs in here because we're going to be bringing the needle up quite a few times. So please don't worry about having lots of holes in the plastic. That is, again, a feature, not a bug. Now what we're going to do is cover each one of these lines in red thread. So I've drawn them all on, ready to go. Doesn't matter where you start. I'm going to bring the needle up. You can see it's coming up through the end of one of those. And now I'm going to bring it back down at the other end of that line. And again, up and down. So now you can see we have every single one of those thick lines covered with a red thread. And that's all that the red thread is going to do for now. So we are going to just fasten it off at the back. Again, just a shallow little back stitch. And cut it off. Straight up there. Leave a tail or not, whatever works. The back doesn't matter at all. So you can see I've got threads stretching everywhere. It's not neat. That is not a problem. So now here's the side we're going to concentrate on. So now these threads are going to be our guidelines. They're going to hold our lace threads in place, and then eventually we're just going to cut them all away. But now you have the scaffolding in place that you can use to make your lace. So we're going to start. You're going to take your lace thread, one of the colors, doesn't matter which one. I'm going to start with a white, and I'm cutting a length, just a sewable length. I guess this is about sort of half a meter. My old sewing teacher used to say measure from your nose to the tip of your fingers. So whatever you're comfortable sewing with, something that's not so long that it gets into massive knots, but not so short that you have to change it all the time because it's a real bummer to change. So I'm threading up the wider needle, the one that fits our thicker thread. Now what you're going to do is make what's called a coordinate. So a coordinate is the part of your lace that covers the lines that you're going to use. So it's like the outline of everything. So we're going to start by just passing the needle underneath. So you want a few threads to be your coordinate. So we're going to wrap it around a few times. The needle is just going to go under. If it's getting annoying and getting caught, you can put the needle through head first. But that's annoying me because it's getting stuck on the threads. So whichever works, as long as the thread goes underneath all of those. And I'm going to go around twice. Pull it through. I'm going to leave a bit of a tail so it doesn't unravel or anything. Fairly tight, but not overwhelming. Just so that it doesn't, you don't want it to sort of bow too much in here. Round again. underneath that first one. Now I'm going to go up and down. So that's why these ones are that kind of diagonal shape, because we want to hold this thread nice and straight in the middle. That's what we're going to be working off for the middle stitches. And just as when you're first learning, sometimes it feels good to learn on a straight line. Now when you get up to this top corner, I want you to pass the needle underneath the coordinate there, as well as under the stitch there. That's going to hold it right in place, and it's going to lock your threads together. So underneath and up. Now back down. Coordinate should always be a minimum of 2 threads. Again, under all of them. If you split the thread accidentally, no biggie. Again, I'm going to go under here, locking it in. Now we're going to come down and do the stem of the little leaf. So underneath here, might not hold together too well yet. Don't worry if they're all looking a little bit separate under here in a second. We're going to go down around. So this is going to be a sweet little kind of edge to hold it with. I'm going to go around that circle twice as well. You don't have to necessarily yet, but it's nice to lay the coordinate all at once. Under again. And now under here and back up to the top. And there's our coordinate. So you can see it's now covered the entire outline that I've drawn on there. We've got our red stitches holding it all in place. Remember, the red stitches are the ones that go through the back. All of your white threads are going to sit on top. So as of now, we still have 0 white threads going all the way through. You want to keep it that way the entire time. So this is a corded buttonhole stitch, or a corded Brussels stitch. It probably has 700 other names. Lace making is weird, but I'm going to be calling it a buttonhole stitch. So I personally find it more comfortable to work from left to right and with my needle coming towards me. If you find yourself more comfortable working right to left with your needle pushing away, or even left to right with your needle pushing away, whichever way you feel the most comfortable, you're very welcome to. It doesn't bother me at all which direction you work, but just for the sort of purposes of this video, I'm going to be working from left to right and pulling my needle towards me, at least for this phase. A little later we're going to change that up. So just never feel like you have to work in exactly the same method as me. Work in whichever way you feel comfortable. So what we're going to do first is just a line along the stem here. So we're going to start by filling out this section of the leaf. I'm really going to pare back the stitches that I'm going to show in this video. If you want to do sort of more intense, more lovely, more advanced lace stitches, I'll do other classes. I do them semi-regularly, but this one, just to keep it really basic, it's just a taster class. We don't want it to go on for, most of my classes go for 2 days, 3 days, weeks, months. So because this is just like a nice little one to contribute to, we're just going to learn a buttonhole stitch and a twisted buttonhole stitch. And that's it. And then, some little kind of joining-y bits. So essentially all you need to do for a buttonhole stitch, it's, you would have done something similar if you've ever done a little bit of embroidery. We are going to bring the needle down like this and around. So I've got a loop that's going from my left to my right. You can see it's just coming down like that. I'm going to bring the needle down underneath both layers of that coordinate. You can see there. I'm going to pull it through into the center of that loop. Pull it along. Just like that. And now we're going to go right next to it. Your threads are going to sometimes go underneath these stitches and sometimes not. Does not matter. We're pulling all of those out later. Now we want these stitches to sit right up close to each other. So this is going to be essentially a solid area of threads. So we're not having it too open. This is where you're just going to practice working on your tension. So you will find out in this process whether you're someone who skews towards quite tight tension or quite loose. And what you want is a nice sort of balance. We're not pulling really tight. We're just letting it kind of sit. As soon as you feel it stopping, you just stop there. Okay, so now you've got that first line. So things to watch out for at this point. This is approximately how close your stitches should be. So all of those threads, you don't want to cram them in. You don't want them so tight that you sort of can't really fit your needle back into the loops. Remember, what's going to happen now is we're going to work back into each one of these loops. So you need it big enough to fit your needle through. You also don't want to have them so spaced out that you can see the coordinate underneath. So just bear that in mind. Essentially, this is, you should be able to see your stitches, not see your coordinate. Yeah, approximately that. But look, if you're someone who works really tight, just go with it. If you work loose, just go with that too. I think really fundamentally, when you're thinking about lace or any kind of textiles, it's much better to just work with whatever tension you know yourself to be comfortable with rather than fighting yourself all the time. I think, yeah, just adjust your work to how you naturally flow, rather than constantly, fighting a battle with yourself and trying to loosen up when you naturally stitch tight or trying to tighten up when you're a loose stitcher. It's fine. It's fine. Everyone stitches differently, and it's nice to just kind of work with that and accept that. First, what you want to do is pass the needle underneath the coordinate. That's going to hold it all in place and make sure it's all attached. So we've gone under the coordinate here and straight away under the coordinate there. It doesn't matter whether you which direction you go under from. If you want to pass it under that way first and then go over, you know what I mean. It's fine as long as the needle goes under at some point in some direction on each row. So we've gone under and under. Now what we are going to do, this is what is now called our cord. This is your coordinate. Sorry, the words are so similar. What we're going to do now is look into each one of these loops. You can see each stitch has created its own little space for you to work back into, and that's what we're going to do. So starting here, just going to bring the needle down underneath the cord as well. So we've gone into the stitch and underneath the cord and pull that through. So now we're going into the next stitch. Ideally, this is what you want. You want to just go stitch by stitch, fill each one up. Pulling them nice and sort of evenly tight again. Remember, as soon as you feel resistance, stop pulling. You just don't want to pull them super tight. Wherever feels comfortable, as long as you can work your needle back into them. Now, if you see at about this point, I'm noticing my stitches are getting a little bit too close together. So you can see it's kind of interrupted. If I keep going here, we might just have a few too many stitches. So I'm going to adjust at this point. And rather than going into, that would be my next stitch, but I'm going to go straight into that one and pull it over. Just so you can see that process of adjusting. And that one you're going to pull a tiny bit tighter so that the threads come together, and then keep going along. So remember, it's never really worth unpicking that much in this. You can always just fix in the next row, whatever it is you're doing. buttonhole stitch. So you can keep doing as many rows of that as you would like. You can fill out that whole section if you would like to. But what I'm going to do now is show you the other stitch that I'm going to, encourage you to have a go at in this project. So we're going to do a twisted buttonhole stitch. Remember, as always, with a solid stitch like this, we're going to create that cord again. So I've gone under the coordinate again, and we're going to start a twisted buttonhole stitch. So twisted buttonhole stitch, what this is essentially the same stitch, but it is going to be slightly longer. So whereas your buttonhole stitch, it's quite a compact little row, the twisted buttonhole stitch is going to be a little bit longer like that, and just cover ground a little bit more quickly. And you can do some fun sort of open things with it. So it would be really nice to kind of walk through and have a go at. First thing though, what I'm going to do is change my thread. So you can see this is getting just a little bit short to sew with. I don't think I would get another row out of that. So I've made the cord. You can see that we did that in the last row. So I'm just going to take the needle off now. Really importantly, when you're changing threads in lace making, you never want to leave, you never want to cut the thread directly off without covering it with some stitches. So you always want to leave a bit of a tail. So I'm going to cut a new thread here, white thread again, same color, nice longish stitchable length, and thread your needle up. So this is going to be the tail of the last one. We're going to essentially use the fact that this is a nice solid corded stitch to weave those ends in. So the ends are essentially going to be these cords. So we've done this cord. Now I'm going to do a second cord going in exactly the same direction as our old one. So your new thread always just mimics exactly what happened with the old. Pull it down like that. Now we've got 2 cords to work over, and that's going to tie in both of our ends. So a twisted buttonhole stitch, what you're essentially going to do, I'm going to start with a buttonhole stitch here just to secure us, and because the coordinate is sort of coming up to meet this one, so we can just make that nice and secure, little knot. Okay, now a twisted buttonhole stitch. Most things are exactly the same at this point. All you're going to do, buttonhole stitch, nothing is different yet. We still are just bringing the needle down. Now the difference with a twisted buttonhole stitch is that at this point, you're going to take the needle and you're going to just pull it up there. And now your thread has a little bit of a twist. And you just pull it down. And keep going into the next one. Buttonhole stitch. Pull that way. And then bring the needle up. Buttonhole stitch, and then bring the needle up. Now it's something to watch out for when you are doing a twisted buttonhole stitch. A few things to watch out for. So first off, when you are twisting, you want to make sure that your needle comes up on this side of the thread, so towards the top, and not on this side of the thread, because you want your twist to be closer to this part, the sort of fabric, the bit that's going to kind of stretch it longer. You don't want your twist to sit across the top of your stitch, or along the base here. So we are going to always bring the needle up on that side and pull it down. Now, another thing to watch, as you might have noticed a couple of times while you're stitching or watching while I'm stitching, these threads sometimes have a bit of a tendency to kind of twist around themselves. So you can see it's sort of twist it all over the place. Sometimes what will help is if you just put your needle into the stitch and kind of guide it into place with the needle. Hard to do this while you're holding it up close to the camera, but just kind of guide it into place, and that way your threads are going to twist nice and evenly. I'll do that again. That was not clear at all. Twist up. Okay. Now I'll put the needle in here and pull it down and let that be sort of guided into place. That might just be something that will help you, you know, if your threads are twisting around themselves. Remember, that's an option. Remember again, we've only got 2 cords here. That's not a necessary part of the stitch. We've only got 2 cords because we're changing threads. And at this point, if we want to sort of avoid a little bit of confusion, because this thread here already has some stitches over the top of it, we can just cut that straight off, because otherwise you don't want to have threads dangling from your work all the time. Any offcuts, you want to hold on to them for later. They come in handy. And I might cut this one off too, because it's being held now by a couple of stitches as well. You can see that we've got some threads wrapped around it at this point, so it's not super necessary to have a tail for that one anymore. So that just makes it nice and easy. Means that you're not going to sort of get old threads tangled. So yeah, keep going with that twisted buttonhole all the way to the end there. And yeah, so those are the 2 stitches. The next thing I'm going to show you is just a little way to make, I'm really enjoying having these kind of little sort of the veins of the leaf. So that's what we're going to do to finish this section off. Then you're going to experiment with a couple of different things in here, just combinations of stitches. So again, making a cord all the way across. And we're going to go back to regular buttonhole stitch. So remember, it's just a loop like that and then pull it down. Very simple. Loop like that and pull it down. But what we're going to do now is every sort of 3 or 4 stitches, we're going to take the thread and go under the coordinate, and then just give it a little twist. Go under that way. Can't see at all what's happening there, really. It's too close to the coordinate. And then continue on. Back to your buttonhole stitch. So now I'll do a couple more. So there's 3. Now I'm going to go under the coordinate. Give it a twist. This is what's going to give us the sort of openness of the stitches. Back to buttonhole, because it's just slightly too small of a sampler, too short of a class to really go deep into any kind of open work stitches. But lace is, you know, one of the most important things is that we have a positive and negative space. You know, that's kind of what really defines a piece of lace. And so in order to do that, this is how we're going to open the space up a little bit. Under the coordinate, twist it, and come back. We can fit 2 more in there. You can do these closer together if you'd like. Maybe we'll do them closer together on the other side. I feel like that's a nice, you know, playing with the scale of them is quite a lovely thing to do. I'm really excited actually, and really curious to see the sort of diversity of the leaves that come back, like what kind of stitches you guys choose, what patterns you decide, what combinations you're deciding. But yeah, give this one a go and then experiment. Might just do the twist right there, so underneath the coordinate. Also does the extra good of making sure we're all attached to the coordinate too, and it's one nice solid piece. Okay, so that's that entire section filled.